And the UN Special Envoy to Syria, Kofi Annan, says he's appalled by reports of a new massacre in the country. Activists say over 200 have been killed in Hama province after a clash between the army and rebels. Fighting broke out while the UN Security Council is debating whether to extend its observer mission or impose sanctions. Finoshina reports from Damascus.
Opposition groups claim at least 200 people, most of them civilians, have been killed in the Syrian central province of Hama. Earlier on Thursday, fierce clashes broke out there between the governmental forces and the rebels, fighting over control of the village of Tremse. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says eyewitnesses spoke of civilians dying in artillery fire before armed militias moved into the village. These are unconfirmed reports, and this information provided by Observatory could change and is very hard to be independently verified. Some analysts have questioned the group's methods, as it counts gunmen, armed opposition as civilian casualties, even though they are carrying weapons and they're taking part in the armed uprising. At the same time, we've been hearing other accounts that the Syrian army had allowed time for the residents of this village to evacuate, and it was only after the rebels refused to surrender that fighting intensified. The opposition is portraying these latest developments as having a strong resemblance to May's Hula massacre that claimed 108 lives, most of them children and women. At that time, the opposition reported governmental shelling, but later strong evidence emerged saying that most of the victims were actually supporters of President Bashar al-Assad. UN Observatory mission here in Syria is still unable to establish exactly who was behind this massacre. In both cases, the news has come while the UN Security Council was about to consider a vital decision on the country's future. And while violence continues to rage all across the country, Damascus has been reporting that a large number of opposition fighters have tried to enter Syria from abroad.
Well, and Jeff Steinberg from the Executive Intelligence Review believes it's the foreign backing of the rebels that's the main obstacle to peace in Syria.
Unfortunately, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey continue to provide financing and significant weapons to the opposition. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton continues to insist as a non-negotiable demand that Assad steps down. And of course, these are all violations of the very document that was signed in Geneva just 2 weeks ago. President Assad proposed to Kofi Annan the name of one of his government ministers, who he said could be his personal representative, negotiating with the opposition a transition government. I think that's an important concession and step forward. The head of the internal opposition, reform opposition movement, Michel Kilo, was in Moscow, and he met with Foreign Minister Lavrov, and he said to Lavrov that his group would be willing to negotiate begrudgingly with President Assad's representatives. It's the external opposition based in London, Paris, and in Ankara who are the big impediment, and they're being encouraged by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, France, Britain, and elements within the Obama administration. So it's a rough Gordian knot to untie, but I think emissary Kofi Annan, with backing from Russia and China, is making one final stab, and I can only say I hope they succeed against all odds.